Hi, I'm Anna Spencer. Welcome, everybody. This is Sunday, the last Sunday in February of 2024. It's 2 o'clock and 1 minute late. Just getting started. And we already have two of my guests here. The last Sunday of every month, Project Save the World hosts a Global Town Hall, where we invite activists and right-thinking people around the world, or left-thinking people, to join us and have a conversation about whatever's on their minds. And you never know what's going to come up. Although I see three faces already, and they're all sound thinkers, so I expect we'll have a good conversation. Other people will be joining us, no doubt, trickling in. In Warsaw, I think, is Alexei Prokorenko.
That's right.
And Alexei is a Russian who immigrated to Poland and is, I think, assimilating. You're going to be a Pole before long, aren't you? The right things are going, Alexei?
Yes, I'm on my way to becoming, to getting a Polish heart, getting a Polish mind, which is, I think, important when you immigrate to a country. It's important to fit in.
Well, that's just terrific. And in California, our two naturalists, and I don't know what to call you guys. You like animals anyway. Marilyn Krieger and Bill Lycum. Marilyn specializes in felines, and Bill specializes in foxes. And I don't know whether cats and foxes get along or not. I never thought about that, but these two people seem to get along very well. Hello, Marilyn. Bill, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to be here. How have you been?
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Good.
Not bad at all. Doing well. And Bill, how about you?
Yeah. Well, it's been very, very busy. And I can only stay on an hour on our chat here because I have something else scheduled for a little later well, I have to leave in an hour.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Everything you've got to say, why don't we start off? Why don't you bring us up to date on the foxes of California?
Well, let me put it this way. I had been monitoring for the past 5 years a pair of gray foxes, and they both died about, I don't know, a month and 2 months ago, something on that order. Anyway, they died of canine distemper. And here in California, canine distemper takes out a lot of animals, okay, because it's not only canines that can catch that virus, but it's other wildlife as well. And it's endemic to the state of California, according to the state veterinarian.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a problem out here.
Well, now what other animals are affected? And by the way, I feel like, pity you, because it must be like losing a pet, isn't it? If you've been monitoring these folks, you've been spending a lot of time on them, right?
Yeah.
They know it and how much they appreciated it, but it has to be a meaningful part of your life, right?
Well, yeah, it is in terms of being able to observe them, and they get to know you. Let's put it this way: I get to be on the inside of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
By so doing, I can capture information about their lives that would otherwise never be seen, and so that's the heart of it all.
How do you do it? I mean, is it mostly photography?
It's both photography and my personal presence. One of the things that I, early on, when I first started this project, it was 13 years ago, I began talking to the foxes, and my voice seemed to draw a lot of curiosity from them.
Yeah.
And so they got used to my voice, they got used to the tempo of my walking and so forth, and they became comfortable with me in that process. So we bridged a vital gap between myself and the wild. And in so doing, again, that was one of the passageways into the interior of their lives, to be able to document. Nobody had ever documented the behavior of that little predator ever before in such depth as I have done. And so it has become an international, I don't know, thing.
Yeah, a lot of people know about it, that you have a special relationship with these.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So what is it like? Can you come up close to them, or what? I'm surprised.
They have their limits as far as how close they'll come. In some cases, they'd come as close as like 15 feet away from me. But then if I took a step toward them, they'd spurt away. They'd not leave the area, but they'd put that distance between us again. And so they had their limits. And that was...
They wouldn't let me, for example, come up that close, presumably.
No.
What would happen if I came near them?
Oh, well, first of all, you probably couldn't, even with my presence. That has happened before with other people, of course, where 2 or 3 of us would be coming down on this overflow channel where they tended to hang out and sleep during the day and so forth. And when that happens, they oftentimes don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, and so
they from a great distance, they know that somebody's in their space, and they can tell, like, what, a block away or something, you think?
Well, they let's put it this way: their hearing is so acute that they can hear the little patter of mouse's feet in grass at more than 300 yards.
No kidding.
And so their hearing is remarkable, and their sense of smell is another whole universe that you and I do not understand. It's absolutely. You enter their world, you're entering an alien world, alien to us.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get to know what that world looks like, they live a pretty interesting life, I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I have, if other people don't mind my taking a little time to explore this, I'm almost embarrassed to acknowledge I have a new mental condition. I would say I'm obsessed, and I'm not exaggerating. I am obsessed with a Vietnamese monkey, and literally for, I don't know, the last couple of months, don't remember how I came across it, but I watch videos a lot, especially at night. If I'm, take a break from something else I'm doing, I'll watch a little video. And I found this monkey named Bibi, who lives with a man and his family, and in Vietnam. They only speak Vietnamese. They hardly speak any other language. But he has something like, well over 200,000 people watching him worldwide. And I have never, I've had pets. I had a dog for 16 years. It was, beloved. I definitely like a person. But I have never had such a fascination for an animal before, because this animal is what they are showing in that um, nightly. I mean, it's like I could watch 4 or 5 of them in a night. They're usually about 15, 20 minutes long, each of these strips. And it'll be some adventure that Bibi is engaged in. He spends a lot of his time just eating and sleeping, and they'll show you that. But he does other extraordinary things, and which have made me feel like I did not believe, I still don't believe, that any animal, short of a human being, can have the kind of intelligence and planning and foresight and motivation and complex decision making and problem solving that this creature does.
Yeah.
And I was equally astonished because I spent a lot of time one time, many months sitting on a set watching a TV show being shot. So I know more or less how they shoot television. Well, this is beyond anything that would be technologically feasible or would have been when I was watching this 22 or 3 or 4 years ago. But now I think they have new technologies because this little monkey, of course, he wears clothes and he can use a fork and he can take off his clothes and go swimming. Whether, he can turn on the faucet and fill the tub, and then he'll jump in. He likes to climb up and splash and jump, keep jumping in the tub and things like that. He can do the laundry. He can go turn on the washing machine. He cooked eggs. Yesterday I was watching. He went to the hen house and made several trips carrying eggs, and got up on the counter, turned on the stove, and put on a pan of water and boiled 2 eggs. And then he took them into his grandmother's room to share. Well, okay, Bill, come back. He took them in to give to his grandmother who wasn't feeling well. Now, this is, you can't do that. Animals just can't figure that kind of thing out. But if he can't climb up someplace, he'll go get a box and he can stack boxes up so he can figure out how to climb and get where he wants to go and so on. Mm-hmm. And all of this, and he'll go. He has a little backpack full of money, and if like his mother, human, is not well, so you see him running down the road. They live out in the country. To about a couple of miles to the convenience store, climb up on the counter, pick out what kind of medication, I don't know whether it's an aspirin or something that he pays for it, and he takes it home and he gives it to his mother, and that kind of thing. Well, so I'm thinking they're spontaneously catching him doing something that nobody has taught him how to do. He seems to be thinking it up on the spot, and you see the spontaneous reflection on what to do to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And they don't seem to have planned it out and trained him. Maybe they probably have planned. They're I don't know. Sometimes they are surprised that, like, the father came in yesterday and said, "Where did you get these eggs?" He really didn't know how the monkey could get the eggs, and never, so. But the other technological answer has to be because they can follow him. I mean, they have several flights of stairs. So if he gets the idea he wants to go swimming, you don't know, he can't tell you, but you see him running up these flights of stairs, and there's a camera on each flight picking him up and following him till he gets to the next land, going up the next one and stuff. They follow him the whole way. Well, now there's not a person there, and he's not interacting with the cameraman at all. So there can't be a cameraman because an animal is going to look like he's seeing a person if there's a person there. So this has to be automatic. So I think maybe what they've done, there are these things called GoPro cameras or action cameras. And I think what they can do is they can put them on maybe they have four or five of them stationed around the house and out in the yard and down the street and everything. Or they have them maybe on drones so they can follow him, because when he's running a mile down the road, they follow him and they're right alongside him going along. You couldn't do that with a regular camera. So I think they must come to something, and they may have something where the cameras are activated, like there are lights that you can put in the yard that if something is there, if there's motion, it'll start the camera. And maybe they have something like that. But at any rate, they can do things with this photography that when I knew what TV production was like, would not have been possible. And I'm still puzzled about how much this animal really understands and how much they are coaching him to do certain things. It's so interesting to me that sometimes I'll spend 2 or 3 hours a day watching, just trying to figure out what's in that animal's mind, because this is a person in an animal's body. That's all there is to it.
When I first started this study in 2009, I got hooked. But before I really began to understand these gray foxes, I brought to it a whole stereotypical mechanical kind of attitude about wild animals. And so it's a pretty traditional view. And when I was first sitting across the road from this little family of foxes, the young ones were playing underneath the brush across the road from me, and they were curious about what I was, But they'd stop and they'd watch me, and I'd be writing down on a piece of a Post-it pad what they were doing, and then they'd go back to play again. And it was there that I saw that each one of those three little pups had different personalities. They weren't all cookie cutter, same, no way. They had their own personalities. And then the second thing that happened that brought me out of my stereotypical background was that I had these cameras set out, the trail cameras. And on this one morning, I had a trail camera that was quite some distance away from where I was. And there was one of the little foxes was hanging out nearby me. Okay. And so I took off and I walked up the road. I looked back, and that little fox was going up the hill along a fence line. And so I just continued back to my trail camera, and lo and behold, that little fox was already there by the time I got there. Indeed, it had anticipated where I was going. And whenever anything can anticipate the future, that's an animal that can think. Okay? And so that began the whole tearing apart of the stereotypes that I carried with me into a new vision of the wildlife that we have out there. And now it's become so important to preserve the wildlife and the biodiversity that we have. If we don't, we're in deep trouble as human beings.
Yeah.
If we keep spreading out, keep destroying their territories, we're in trouble, because we need them as much as they need us.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I mean, I don't know how I never needed a monkey before, but I tell you, I need this monkey now because when I get frustrated with some work or something like that, I think I need to take a break. I'll watch Bibi a while. And it it's always very refreshing to see the family because they're very pleasant people who are very kind to each other. You never see, for example, if he does something naughty, he breaks something or he's thoughtless, they don't really scold him very much. They say, now next time, don't do that again. And he can feel a little guilty because, for example, his father has a zipper jacket. He'll come and unzip the jacket and crawl inside like he's trying to hide his face with shame to apologize or to be show that he's sorry for what he did, which was nothing in particular, but broken egg or something. So I think that's just
Yeah.
beyond me. Do your foxes ever show they feel guilt?
I've never seen, no, I don't think so. I've never seen
Mhm.
guilt. I've
Mhm.
seen a
That's-
lot of other things. I've seen intense happiness, and pleasure in what they're doing. They have times when they play with one another. They have fun.
Uh-huh.
They
Uh-huh.
do. But I wanted to ask Andre whether or not he's had any interactions with any wildlife and what do
Yeah.
you think, Andre? Or Alexei?
When I was still in Russia, I traveled to a city which is like 200 or 300 miles from Moscow, and a couple of miles from that city, Kostroma, there is a moose farm,
Mm.
which they say is unique in the world because really not many people have really tried to tame the moose because they and in the Soviet Union there was an idea that moose could be tamed to serve like horses, which turned out to not to be the case because they get very uh, quickly and very unexpectedly scared. For example, when they're used at the front line, it was planned to use them during the Second World War instead of horses. But when they hear, for example, a cannon shooting, they can rush in unpredictable directions.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the same holds true for using them as, for example, as for carrying goods, for example, for transportation instead of horses. So what I collected from that tour of that farm was that really the distance between the moose and the horses is the same as between the dog and the fox, because the dog and the fox both belong to the canine family, but they're not they not interact with people at all, so they cannot be approached like dogs. Although they even look the same.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, but we had a
How
chance.
many moose did they have on this farm?
They had several dozen of them,
Hmm.
and it is there is no way to tame a male at all. What they do, what the researchers do, they start to become a link in the most important chain in our life, the chain between the mom and the son, or the child, the calf. So the scientists, the researchers, become kind of calves for the mom when the child is born, and they become a mom for the children.
Mm.
And by doing that, they can kind of become the third link in that chain, and they can do the job. And so the visitors can even go as far as to give carrot to them, and they don't bite. They just lick it very very gently. It's amazing. And I also can recall feeding foxes when I traveled to some to that very region. We sometimes used to go there for mushrooms and berries, and we saw a couple of foxes on the brim of the forest, of the local forest, and so we gave them some food. We did not. They would run away. I had been told that if a fox is approaching a human being, it could be dangerous because it means that the fox can be just infected with rabies. So they lose every kind of fear, and that means they can bite. A healthy fox would not approach a human being. So we just left some food for them, and we watched them from the distance eating on that food.
Yeah.
That's very gratifying, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to say something about guilt way back when we were talking about it. And what I wanted to say is that people have a tendency to put their emotions and feelings on an animal. An animal does not feel guilt. We feel guilt. But their behavior is such that they'll learn that they did something that is kind of displeasing, but it's not, they don't feel guilt per se. And that's a common thing that people see. It's anthropomorphizing. I can't talk right now. I'm having problems saying it. And there are lots of things like that. So I work with lots of animals, and people will say, I help people with their cats, and they'll say, oh, my cat is getting back at me. My cat is guilty. My cat is doing this because of this. Yes, there are always reasons for the behavior. Absolutely. But guilt isn't really something that animals do. That's something we do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here we have Peter Wadhams joining us.
Yeah.
Hello, Pia. Nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you all. Hello.
Why don't you bring a chair and sit beside Peter? You can.
I've just come back from out. I'll have to check something and then I'll join you. Okay.
Okay. That'll be good. Okay. And I think that a minute ago, Charles Tauber was trying to join us too, but I don't know. I don't see him now. I hope his connection is all right. Yes, glad to see Peter. We will be. Oh, here comes Charles Tauber again. Charles is in Vukovar, Croatia, and Peter, I think, is probably in Turin, Italy, aren't you?
So yeah.
Yes. I'm going to be. Will I be seeing you tomorrow for a show? We're going to have a forum tomorrow about iron salt aerosol.
Yes, well, I see it's in my diary, so I better do it.
Yeah. We'll have a conversation tomorrow, and there we will talk about. I've received a message from, I think, Franz Oeste. Don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's one of the people doing the research on the leaders of the study of the use of iron salt aerosol to reduce methane in the atmosphere. And he has a new discovery, which is relevant to an announcement that I have to make about the passing of our beloved friend Stephen Salter this week. And I hope that Franz was able to communicate to Stephen that he'd made a very significant breakthrough that's relevant to Stephen's own contribution.
Yes.
How's everything here? Well, we're having financial problems still. And all over the world, it's a problem in terms of the trauma. There was a thing on one of the emails this week that even though the war is 30 years back, only 10% of the people who have had sexual abuse are being treated. So it's pretty awful stuff.
Are being treated or have been treated.
Sorry, they have not been treated,
Mhm.
and that's one of the problems.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Sexual abuse was a major thing, and I mean, didn't I
Oh,
guess I did
absolutely.
hear about rape as during that period as a form
absolutely.
of warfare, but I
It
guess
was used as a weapon.
yeah, yeah.
It was very clearly used as a weapon of war.
Uh-huh.
And there's a great deal of domestic violence. So yeah. What can I tell you?
Mm.
One sec here. The computer.
Well, you're
Sorry, the
doing right.
computer is.
You don't have to fix your equipment. You're doing okay. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and so where did Marilyn go? Marilyn was I was about to contest her argument that animals don't feel guilt, because I think my little friend
I'm
the
here.
monkey does. Where are you, Marilyn? I'm not seeing you.
I'm
Oh, there you
here.
go.
I'm here.
Uh-huh. Okay, so animals don't feel guilt, but this little guy will clearly look apologetic, and they wait. They're not really reprimanding him. They would never punish him, but and they're not even harsh in scolding him, but they do correct him. They'll say, "Don't do that again," and then they'll wait and talk to him about it until they think that he understands his mistake. And then they'll say, "Oh, I see now. Bibi understands what you did. That was a mistake." And when they're satisfied that he gets it, then they let go of it. But a couple of times he resisted. A couple of times he felt that that his mom was being unfair to him in criticizing him because it was really an accident or something. You could see what happened, and in fact, she didn't see what happened, and it was kind of an accident. So you could see he resented that she was criticizing him for something that she shouldn't have, and she finally got it herself, and she apologized to him for being unfair in her criticism. So it's really quite remarkable. And I don't know how they understand each other as well as they do, because I certainly can't understand their intentions, the animal's intentions. But we're talking about a little monkey in Vietnam that I'm obsessed with. And I'm watching it on my computer every day. New adventures where this animal does things that are, I would swear there's a person inside that little monkey body.
Well, they are primates. They are primates.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. They're pretty closely related to us, whereas the fox is way, way, way out there
Yeah.
in terms of a relationship, to human beings.
Yeah. Well, what impresses me is his problem-solving ability. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got to make several logical steps of what he wants to accomplish. It may take him an hour and a half or 2 hours to do this activity that he's trying. For example, if his grandmother's sick, he wants to go get eggs and boil them and feed her. And you see what all he has to go through to do this. And it takes real strategic analysis of how to get there, and how to get a pan and put water on, and how to turn the stove on, and how to take it out and without getting burnt, and taking it to your grandmother, and boiled eggs and things like that. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I was I was gonna say this about their emotional life, okay?
Uh-huh.
Lions, by the way, I name the animals that I'm monitoring. I don't use scientific protocol in that regard. And the male in this pair, his name was Limos, means long neck in Greece, Greek. Anyway, and his mate was Big Eyes. Okay, so Limos died first, and he died at the bottom of a ramp that goes down to a concrete channel. And I didn't know it at the time. I was at the top of this ramp, and I was about ready to head down the ramp when off to my right, or off to my left, a Big Eyes jumped off of the retaining wall and was going to move away, was going to go back down into the channel. But I called to her, and at that time I did not know that Limos was dead down at the end of this ramp.
Mhm.
Okay. So she stopped, she turned around, and she came trotting back up behind me. And I took care of a trail camera that was right there. She was behind me, and I knew there was something wrong with her. She wasn't acting normal at all. And so I just decided, once I finished up with the camera, I walked down the ramp, and when I got to the bottom of the ramp, there he was. She had been sitting across from him on that retaining wall, sort of like keeping a vigil to her dead mate.
Mhm.
And so that told me a whole story in and of itself, right then and there, as a part of their relationship. And then when she died, she walked around in an area that he had been struggling through in front of another trail camera nearby. And she just went in kinds of circles walking around where he had been. And she died right there.
The same place he died?
Not the same place that he died, but the same place where he had been struggling to keep walking. I mean, when canine distemper hits the neurological system, they lose balance, they lose everything that keeps them going, and it's a struggle even to just walk. And those are the last phases of their life.
Yeah, I remember I had a dog who died of it, and it was pathetic watching him at the last. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible disease.
Mhm. Who's speaking? Somebody said something.
Marilyn did.
Yeah, I said it was just it's a terrible disease. Awful. And it zoonotic. I mean, it goes between species, raccoons, for instance.
I'm not hearing you well. Get closer to your mic, dear.
Well, she said it also hits raccoons
Sorry about that.
and skunks.
Yeah. How's that? Is that better?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what I said is that it's an awful, awful disease, and it jumps between species like raccoons.
Oh.
How about humans?
No.
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 What about cats?
I don't know.
Oh,
Cats and dogs? I mean, I know dogs get it because that's what my dog died of. Mm.
not that I know of, but there are other diseases. In fact, COVID is considered a zoonotic disease. Cats can get COVID from their people.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't think that cats get distemper. Not that I know of. They get other things, which are terrible.
Mhm. Okay. I want to say hello to Peter some more because I haven't talked to you in a while. I hope you're healthy again. Sarah, where were you planning to go?
To Edinburgh, and I've got there's a conference there that I'm due to attend, and of course I knew that Stephen Salter was ill, so I thought I could combine that with visiting him in Edinburgh, but unfortunately he died the day before I was due to go.
Is the conference still on? Are you still trying to go or not?
Oh yes, I'm still trying to go. It's just difficult to be mobile, and it shouldn't be. But it's just gradually crept up on me, and is annoying now. But I'll attempt to just be as mobile as possible in Scotland, and hope that works.
I would think, getting around Scotland isn't so bad. I would lend you my walker. I have a rollator
Well,
that I use just to go around my apartment. I don't go more than a few feet without it, and even then I'm cautious. But I don't think you should try to go to Greenland and clamber around the glaciers with my rollator. It's not quite adequate.
no, Greenland's going a bit far, but Scotland is probably.
Okay, what is the conference about?
It's it's an Arctic conference. It's called Arctic Marine Science. It's about quite a big conference, and it's being held in Edinburgh University.
Mm-hmm. Well, are you still planning to go?
Yes. At the moment,
Are you giving a paper?
Yes. And Pia is one of the organisers.
Okay. Hello, Sandy Greer. Okay. Actually, I'd be interested in contacting some more people in Russia who are interested in Arctic megafauna. That big animals from the kind that lived in the Pleistocene period, and that were so extraordinarily numerous in the Arctic during the Pleistocene, that those animals, if we could repopulate the Arctic with them again, with animals that are that big, that have to trample the snow and kick it aside to get at the frozen grass during the winter, that those animals would, by their presence in large herds, keep the average temperature of the soil significantly lower than it is now. And there is a couple of scientists, well, actually a father and his son. The father is a well-known Russian scientist. I don't know what title, what discipline he would claim, but his name is Sergei Zimov. And I don't know, Peter, whether I ever asked you whether you'd had any contact with the Zimovs, but they maintain a big park. Well, they call it a park because they fenced off a large, many square miles of territory, and they go around the world collecting the biggest wild animals they can, from moose to muskox to bison to all kinds of big animals. They really would love to be able to have the woolly mammoth back, but that's not quite in the cards. But they bring these animals to live there, and they have measured the temperature of the soil. And indeed, it is a degree or two colder than outside the fence, because these animals move around in herds and in the winter actually trample and keep the ground colder. And their argument is that if we could repopulate the Arctic, that it would, as with the enormous number of animals that existed during the Pleistocene period, that we could keep the Arctic from the permafrost from melting and all that methane re-entering the atmosphere. I want to interview these two men. I've had them on my mind for a long time. I'm not necessarily convinced that they're right, but they actually have tried to do some measurements of the soil and so on. Do you know about them, Peter?
Well, I've heard of them, yes, and I thought they were trying to kind of breed, breed mammoths, but it seems if they're simply trying to just breed large creatures, then it ought to be a lot easier to do. But it seems that it to make sense and would be something worth trying, I think.
Well, this fellow, the person who's trying to recreate the woolly mammoth is not the Zemos themselves. They are waiting and eagerly hoping that this other guy can do it. His name is George Church, and he's a biology professor at Harvard who is literally trying to bring woolly mammoths back to life. But the way he's doing it is not you usually hear of people who are trying to find DNA from fossils and in the laboratory put back the right combination of DNA so they can actually put it into an elephant and get the elephant to give birth to a mammoth. But he's not doing it that way. He's just trying to selectively breed elephants with, I think, more and more ability to withstand the cold and other maybe larger size and that sort of thing. I think it will take it'll take him a long time, but he may have more prospect of being able to create something like a woolly mammoth than by reviving pieces of DNA that have been found in fossils. I don't know. Anyway, I'm trying to find additional people who know about this plan or this idea and who take it at least seriously enough to talk about it. I think most people will just, brush it off as a silly idea. And, maybe it is, but I think it's an interesting idea. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I hope that they're studying all the implications. If you bring back the mammoth, how will that affect the rest of the ecosystem?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of details that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the mammoths in those days were enormous, but there were many other huge animals. I mean, all of the animals that exist today existed in those days twice the size as they are now, practically. So the mammoths were not entirely unique in the size of and the number of them. They were, apparently the Arctic was pasture land and that kind of thing. So it was easy to graze, and they had huge numbers of these megafauna available. Anyway, I'm talking too much today. Somebody make me be quiet. Sandy, you can make me be quiet.
I have a question.
Yeah.
During the Pleistocene, what was the weather like? What was the climate like during that period?
It was warmer, but I don't know how much warmer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If there was pasture land up there in the near the Arctic Circle, yes, then you could. Well, it maybe during that period of time, with it warmer in the north, we're coming back around to that with global warming. That's shaking up everything right now.
Oh, yeah. The one thing that the Zimovs are concerned about most is that the tree line is going farther and farther north. So you
Yeah.
have trees growing in the Arctic that don't belong there. And they're not the only ones doing that. There's a book that we reviewed in Peace Magazine about a year ago, and I interviewed the author. It's a guy named Ben Rawlins, who lives in England. And his book was called, I think, something like The Tree Line. He went all around all the countries in the Arctic, and visited to see what was happening in terms of the growth of trees, which he thinks are just terrible, because it's causing all kinds of problems. The herders, the Sami reindeer herders, for example, say that their livelihood is doomed. They can't continue herding reindeer. For one thing, there are these trees that are always in the way growing, and also it's getting warmer. The trees make things warmer, and then they get more rain instead of just snow. So on top of the snow, they'll have rain, and it freezes and makes ice on top of the snow. And then the reindeer need to go in and knock it down to get to the grass underneath, and it cuts their legs, all the ice. So it's not there's no future there for the reindeer or for the people who herd them.
All right. I'm going to have to leave. So,
Okay. Well,
carry on.
I'm sorry for your loss. I really, I know what it is to love a pet, and I think you must feel sort of the same way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another pair will come back.
All right.
Okay, so there's a couple of issues that I work on. One is the nuclear waste issue, and then the other is fighting racism. So I'll just more briefly begin with that, because I just recently applied for a research grant to investigate the sources and the people behind the residential school denialism movement, because that's definitely part of the far right movement in Canada. So, and now the far right is trying to discredit Indigenous people, and there's horrible things said about them, even in mainstream media. But the other topic, which I've been actively working on for 10 years in a volunteer capacity as a concerned citizen, is fighting against the deep burial of nuclear waste. And but what's been in the news in recent months, which finally it's getting attention, is also the other burial controversy in Canada, which is about the Chalk River near surface disposal facility, which is close enough to the Ottawa River that people who know science and understand science realize that all of the what's called low level radioactive waste is going to end up in the water pathways. But there is misinformation being communicated as usual by the nuclear proponents, because it's been shown, and people have spoken out in the news media in recent weeks, that it's going to include intermediate level waste, which means that it's not going to, the contamination levels and the toxic levels are not going to be radically decreased for, a very long time, and it's going to impact on all the trophic levels of life in the water and on the land, including leading up to human health issues. But environmentally, it's going to seriously impact the way of life of the Algonquin First Nations. There's a whole group of Algonquin First Nations who were just totally shut out from consultation. So they're taking this proponent to court, and so there's going to be a court case about this. And there's a lot of citizen groups in support, standing with the Algonquin people, who also have done environmental studies and showing that like what the proponent did and did not do. I mean, it's just totally unethical, and it needs to be called out. And also that the fact that the CNSC, which is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, gave a green light and gave a license to the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories proponent for this project. And it's just disgraceful because they just ignored just so much excellent environmental research done by citizen groups and the Algonquins. So the journalism coverage, repeatedly, there has been a statement made by every journalist who's written a story about this, and at least finally, a bunch of journalists finally wrote about nuclear waste. But what they do is every one of them uses a piece of information from Canadian Nuclear Laboratories and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, which says that it is not likely that significant environmental impacts, adverse environmental effects will happen. Not likely that significant adverse effects will happen. But I looked up the regulation for that, the federal regulation. And so what I'm doing now is just, as a concerned citizen, I'm analyzing that whole regulation, and I'm going to give it over to the Algonquin people for them and their lawyers and other people who are concerned, because what I've read in it is that the whole regulation is ass backwards, that according to the federal regulation, you cannot determine what is significant adverse effects until you implement mitigation. But mitigation, the practices aren't even invented or tested yet to show that they would actually work. And then it would be too late because the radionuclides already have been released into the environment. So it is so stupid that, to say that it's like putting the buggy before the horse, right? So, I mean, there's so much that's wrong with this regulation. So I just want to point out some highlights and contribute that piece of information and get it out there. And I think I'm also going to send it to the newsrooms to really tell the editors that your journalists they just can't take everything at face value of what they're told by nuclear proponents. They've got to investigate to find out what these statements actually mean and whether they're truthful, right? And accurate to what really could happen. So anyway, I just go into orbit over these issues, right? And so I just got to do what I can do in my little way, because nobody listens to me. I'm not an expert, but I'm a former journalist and I know how to investigate. And I just wish working journalists today would use their brains and do it, because they're not. And it really upsets me, at least not on the nuclear waste issue. So there you go. So.
Okay. Well, I wish I had something to contribute. I don't know. Is there anybody here who knows a single thing about how to relate to what you've said? It's all kind of alien to me. I'm sorry. Peter, do you have any thoughts about what she's saying?
Well, not specifically about this, but in general terms, the nuclear disposal issue is a very big thing, and you can usually depend on not being able to trust official pronouncements, simply because it's easier. It's easier not to. I mean, it's easier to let things go because it doesn't cost so much to fix because you're not fixing it. So if you've got a nuclear waste problem, and it's easier to ignore it than it is to try and fix it, which is sad.
Yeah.
Well, it's sad that that's something you expect in the US because there's all kinds of scandals there, but I didn't expect it in Canada as well. Good.
You don't expect as much bad stuff in Canada? Well,
no, always expect Canada to be nicer and better.
So you expect more scandals in the United States than Canada? Okay.
I think the problem is Canada is so boring. I read the Globe and Mail, which is the main Canadian newspaper, and I must say it has become absolutely the dullest newspaper in the world. And I think it's because Canadians are not very interesting. Also, Canadians are very parochial. I would say most Canadians are not all that interested in international affairs. If it's something Canadian, especially bureaucracy, if you want to talk about, somebody who stole 50 cents from the Treasury of Canada, they will get really interested in talking about that, or some reorganization of a bureaucracy in Ottawa. But otherwise, not much of anything, not much of interest. I'm interested, by the way, in what the rest of the world has been thinking, especially people, let's say, in Croatia and Serbia, about Navalny's death. Tell me what you can about it from your point of view, Charles.
Well,
What do you hear?
Everybody is shocked by it. And there's
Get
a
closer
worry.
to your camera, to the microphone.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody here is shocked by it. And is actually worried about the local consequences, because of the local consequences that conceivably could come out of Ukraine, because Ukraine is not very far, and Ukraine and the Russians have a fair amount of influence in Serbia, and also to a certain extent in Bosnia. So, and of course, with what's happening in the US, in terms of Trump, people also are quite worried.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we also have the point of the European elections, which are coming up in the spring, fairly soon. And those are going to be to the European Parliament, but there are also going to be local elections, quote unquote local, but national elections in Croatia. There have already been elections in Serbia, which have not, where the results are very highly disputed. In the last time I spoke, I mentioned the whole idea of traumatization and the fact that traumatization has not been dealt with from the wars of the 90s. And the question is, what is going to come out of Ukraine, and what is going to come out of Gaza, Palestine, and what is coming out of Syria, Turkey, and of course, the whole migrant situation on the Mediterranean.
I'm sorry, excuse me. You said Syria, Turkey? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yes.
What about Syria, Turkey?
Well, the Syrian refugees who are coming into Turkey across the border. And that hasn't been dealt with at all. Also, the traumatization of because of the earthquake in Turkey last year, just about a year ago, has not been dealt with at all, really. There was a report on BBC very recently that very little rebuilding is going on.
But now hold on,
So-
you're throwing too much at me all at once.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I just want to unpack it a little bit. I asked about Navalny, and you said you're concerned about the effect in Ukraine. How would Navalny's death have any implications in the war, for the war, or Ukraine? I don't get it.
Okay. Navalny was the primary opposition to Russia in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And he was opposing the Ukraine war. Now, this is making Putin is killing, in effect, everybody who opposes him, murdering. And the point is, where is this going to go eventually? It's very worrying. The whole situation is very worrying. Also,
Looks
with
to me
regard
like
to
Putin just got a completely free hand.
basically, yes.
There's nobody, I mean, all I see about the US, for example, is Biden has said, no, you don't dare do this because we'll do something terrible back to you if you do. And now the statement is, well, he really can't do anything. The US has nothing left by way of sanctions or anything else they can do to hurt Putin unless they want to take all his money. I mean, there's something like $300 billion investments in the US that they could confiscate, but the US is not willing to do that and thinks that it would not be legal. I don't have an opinion, but the U.S. can't do anything really to hurt Putin for what he did, apparently, and I don't know anybody else who can.
First of all, I want to hear what Alexei has to say about all of this.
Yeah, I want to hear Alexei too.
Yeah.
Alexei, you're the fountain of wisdom about Russian matters. Now you get us all cleared up, please.
Yeah, we've had some terrible news. Actually, a little over a week ago, Alexei Navalny was killed in prison, and we now say that he was killed, although it's not known, and it may never be known what really happened. But why we say that is because regardless of what the events were that immediately caused his death, the whole sequence was triggered and directed by the regime, by Putin himself. He was Putin's personal prisoner, and there were accounts that such high-profile political prisoners, when they are put into prison, they've got cameras everywhere. So the big shots, Putin and his cronies, can always, at any moment, observe what they're doing, how they're being treated or mistreated. So it's kind of sick, but that's what's taking place. And putting a person into a single cell in a damp cell in torturous conditions is for almost 1 year out of 3 years that he has spent in prison. 1 year was spent in a very harsh single person cell, which is by itself a torturous murder. And of course, the backlash to that is quite strong in Russia. Many people, even what you, Charles, might be interested in as a doctor, even the suicide rate came up dramatically in this week because some people, really, statistics says that people start to call hotlines, emergency lines for suicide because they have lost hope, the last hope, because Navalny was perceived as an alternative, as a promise of a better Russia, of a Russia that's peaceful, that's democratic, that's liberal, that's not that aligns itself with the rest of the world, not only China and North Korea. And now the hope is gone, and many people feel like they have lost someone very close to them, young people especially, because at such an age, at an adolescent age, when people are craving truth, they heard that truth from Navalny and his team, and now they are left alone with the lies, face to face with the lies of the regime, and that's a tragedy for them. I may be a little bit older now, and but I can imagine myself at an age of 15, for example, losing that hope for every improvement. That hit kind of hard. But
let's say what you're talking. Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, what you're saying is happening all over the world. The youth suicide rates are going up enormously.
Mhm.
And this is true in Africa, this is true in Russia, it's true pretty much all over the world. And there's nobody to treat it. There's nobody who's dealing with it. And this is absolutely tragic. Yeah. I have another question for you, and that is that I've been hearing that the rate of desertion in Russia, and the people leaving the country and deserting from the army is going up drastically. Do you know anything about this? I've heard a few things, but I can't say a couple of things because, I was in one meeting where we were asked not to, but you might have more.
Sorry, there are things that, excuse me, there's some things that are confidential that you can't share, or what? You can't say.
Well, names and certain things.
Okay.
That's what I've heard too. I read it recently, the other day. I read a certain post on Facebook or something by one of our opposition media, and they conveyed the same statistics that there is a special organization, a Ukrainian organization, that helps the people who are willing to lay down their arms to do it peacefully and safely for them. And the number of those Russian soldiers who choose to approach them first by means of a secure chat, and then then doing what they wanted, came up like tenfold compared to
in what period of time?
Compared to the same month of the previous year.
Oh.
February 23 versus February 24. So people, this has many reasons, because the people who were mobilized, that's a very unjust kind of story, because you may have heard that Putin recruits convicts, really very harsh convicts who have been put into prison for murder, for assaults, for like very, very grave crimes, for 20 years, for 30 years. Putin got them pardoned, and if one is a criminal who has been jailed for let's say murder, they only have to be in the front line for 6 months. Then you're clear. You get pardoned. You can start your life afresh. And there have been very like notorious cases of famous criminals being freed and being given clean record, which is not true for those mobilized persons. Those who were mobilized in September 22, October 22, they're still on the front line. Almost 1.5 years from then, they're still being held on the front line. And recently there has been a movement of their wives and daughters and mothers wearing white scarves or white neckerchiefs. That's a movement which is called Way Back Home. These mothers are struggling for mothers, wives, and daughters are struggling to get their dear ones back home, because there's no knowing when they will be allowed to come back home. Apparently, Putin fears a second wave of draft, a second wave of mobilization, at least before the elections, and so he doesn't want to organize any kind of rotation. So fresh troops are being sent in instead of those initial recruits. But we could imagine what it takes, like to stay in the front, in the trenches for so long. It completely breaks the psyche, I guess, and that's probably why. That's probably the answer to the question of why people are increasingly prone to desertions, to surrenders, to crossing the front line.
Well, if they desert, I don't know how hard it is, but if they phone up this number or whatever and say, I want to come to Kyiv, I want to surrender, what happens to them? Do they get treated right? Well, and I expect they're probably treated pretty well by the Ukrainians, but what happens to their relatives back at home? I would imagine that they would be very nervous about exposing their families to retribution if the government decided to take it out on the loved ones instead of the deserter himself whom they can't reach. Does anybody know what happens along those lines?
Well, as far as I know, in most of Russia, this is not the case. Evil as Putin's regime is, so far it has not touched the relatives of his opponents or foes or enemies. For most of Russia, that is true, but there's one exception. The exception being the Chechen Republic, where Ramzan Kadyrov is like a state in a state. It's like an emirate within Russia, which is governed by its own laws. They say that even Putin openly admitted 10 years ago that Ramzan Kadyrov has all his province, all his republic within his property. It's like his private property. So he does what he wants, and they have an even harsher dictatorship in the Chechen Republic, and in that, so you might have heard about killing gay people in that republic. Torturing gay people, you could say that the regime is even many times harsher than in the rest of Russia, and in that republic they take care of the relatives. They can punish the relatives. That's kind of that's possible.
Well, but nobody seems to have any hope of doing anything politically. There's just it's not possible, I gather, for any kind of independent resistance to occur, political opposition, right?
People are dejected from what I collect. People are just, they lost every kind of belief in their ability to make a choice.
But do they believe in Putin? I mean, he's going to win for sure. And I've heard that, it isn't like people turn against him. They seem to love, well, they're not the only people in the world who love their dictators. I mean, dictators generally turn out to be fairly popular, in many countries. A lot of people just seem to have a strong man, as they put it, in charge of things, and that's going to make everything work better. Well, certainly the Russians have more than their share of that kind of ideation, let's say, if you'll excuse my stereotyping. Maybe it's unfair of me, but I don't think so. I think, people should have seen this coming. It clearly was going to happen if people didn't take stronger stands against him early on and do things that were really effective. And the people I used to hang out with were passive from the get-go. I mean, at a time when people in Serbia would take a stand against Milosevic, and they would go to Belgrade, and you'd get the whole city, like 500,000 or 1 million people would show up from all parts of the world in one day to protest against Milosevic, and the guy had to quit. He had to leave. He had to give up. Moscow is probably 10 times the population of Belgrade. And you might, when I was there at the time of that Bolotnaya movement, the movement that was so crucial in the park. It's called the Swamp. I don't know, that there's this park of part of Moscow, and that was, they might get 5,000 people at max, so people were just not up for it. And, they should have seen what they could have seen. They'd been through, the totalitarian period. They knew what a gulag was and what they could do to you, but somehow, no.
Well, it's partly history, because if we get back to Gulag several generations ago, and as well as many other practices of Stalinism, I conclude from that the sad fact that the people who were prone to resistance, who were bold, who were courageous, they got killed. They stood against the regime, and they got killed in labor camps. Whereas those who mostly survived, by and large, those were the people who were more conformist. They were, some of them denounced each other, turned in their neighbors, turned in their friends. So it was kind of a negative selection, but nevertheless, those people rose in 1991 to prevent that makeshift committee that captured Gorbachev from taking over the power. So and the sons and grandsons, maybe already, of those people who gathered in almost 500,000 people gathered in Moscow in that August summer night. The sons of those people are more conformist now. They do not protest, at least efficiently. They do not struggle, and some of them buy into the propaganda, but not so much the young generations, but the older one, because the propaganda is really something that's the only thing which is efficient, I would say, in the country. Not the military.
Stanton.
Yeah.
Greetings, Richard. Nice to have you join us. You've been hearing Alexei Prokhorenko talk about, we've been the last little while considering the any possible repercussions globally of the death of Navalny, and nobody anticipates any disruptive consequences, as far as I can tell. Are you? You're not predicting anything, are you, Alexei?
Well, it might not have the immediate consequences because the society is partly dormant. Partly it may be it's increasingly fear because the laws are growing more and more repressive, and I come across more and more people who are even afraid of speaking openly. So. I guess something serious should happen to make them desperately willing to fight for their food, I guess, because for those people of dignity and the freedom of choice is profoundly secondary to the risks that they might take, or going to prison, and as well as the oligarchs. I heard one of them, Oleg Tinkov, which is a rare instance of a self-made man, a banker who made a very innovative bank. He was, I think, the only one who openly, or the only oligarch, only large businessman, tycoon, who openly defied Putin. And now he says that many of his fellow oligarchs hate Putin in private talks. They call him names. They just want to get rid of them. But when it came really to denouncing him publicly, to declaring their opposition to him, they made an agreement that they would do so. But he was the only one who did. The others were like, I will do it tomorrow, I will do it the day after tomorrow.
Well, what has happened to him? Is he okay?
He was stripped of his bank, and he now lives in London. So he was deprived of all of his assets, of all of his business.
Well, that's better than Novichok.
Sure, but that kind of explains that people are. It explains that a concerted action is not so much possible in Russia, because even if we agree to, you cannot rely on other people to follow suit. Even if we agree to act in a certain fashion, then one might expect that one will jump alone and the others will remain on the cliff, so to speak. Unfortunately,
Now combine that with the emboldening statements of Trump, where I think that gets really scary, as far as I'm concerned.
Are you talking about that recent statement he made about how he would have encouraged Putin to attack the European countries?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we would be right in the line of it here. So, I mean, what Alexei is saying, this scares the hell out of me, quite frankly. What Putin is being allowed to do, the world's reaction to it, which is also, they're acting like scared rabbits behind Putin. You forgive me, but people are not taking action and not taking nonviolent action. And this is going all over the place.
Richard?
Well, I was just yesterday, of course, at a Ukrainian rally, and the feeling there was that it was a very sad day because, of course, all the people that are being killed, the children that have been stolen away to Russia. and the numbers vary, I guess, from 200,000 to 700,000, depending on who you listen to. So it's a huge number. When you listen to the stories of the Ukrainians, I mean, it's very sad. They're being killed, bombed, and the country is being destroyed. But they're still talking of Ukrainian victory. And in war, there is no winners, only losers. I mean, you're losing in terms of lives, you're losing in terms of your country. And I mean, both Putin and the Ukrainians are fiercely wanting to win. And so I don't see that either side is going to win. I think right now is a stalemate. And so now, because it's a stalemate, this is the time for negotiation. And unfortunately, there seems to be two wars, the proverbial Russia-Ukraine, but also the Russia NATO/US. And I think that Russia-Ukraine would go for peace, but Russia versus NATO/US seems to veto any peace plan, the same as the US is vetoing any peace plan in Gaza. So it's very frustrating in that regard. And yet, you know, I mean, any poll that you take, 70 to 80% of the population is against war, is against nuclear weapons. And yet you have countries that are being run by a few oligarchs, plutocrats, or in the States, again, whatever you want to call them, the people that run the armament companies. And they're making big profit.
I don't think you better write it off that way. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than just saying that big business is the cause of this whole conflict. No, the armament makers are making weapons because there are plenty of people who say that they really, really desperately need them in order to defend what they consider absolutely crucial to their own future and their own well-being. The majority of people in Ukraine really do not want to have a ceasefire with Russia now on any terms that could have any chance whatever of being accepted by Russia. I think I would bet anybody who knows Ukraine would agree to that. I don't know. Alexei, would you agree with that?
Well, for what I know, the sentiment among the Ukrainians, at least what I've read, what I've heard, is that they're willing to fight on so far. That their will to resistance is not diminishing, and even if those guys in power want to make a certain concessions, they're going to be out of power pretty soon, because the people of Ukraine are really have very much resolve on fighting, and they feel they have a just cause, and they're not up to making any concessions right now, and that's in a way it's very good in terms of serving the cause of justice, because if they are defeated, this will mean that anyone can just take land from their neighbors and go unpunished for that. That's going to turn the world into a mess.
That it's a real likelihood, a probability, I think almost a certainty, that if Putin could get away with slicing off a quarter of Ukraine and keeping it, as he would now under the terms that he could accept and would accept for ceasefire, he would go on and want Estonia and want, all these other parts of Moldova, who knows what else.
Mhm.
That would not be the end of the matter. That would just be the next step. And so it is not unreasonable for people to say that their destiny is dependent on getting weapons. And as a peace person, it's really hard for me to make that kind of statement. I've spent my life trying to say, let's have peace but this time, I mean, the only terms that you could get a ceasefire right now.
Then there's Taiwan. There's Taiwan, and I think I'm afraid that Xi Jinping, the president of China, is waiting to be encouraged to kind of take a decisive action, because the whole narrative of Taiwan for him is very similar to Putin's narrative of Ukraine. Because for what I know, I'm not an expert on China, but for what I know, Taiwan is like a crucial part of the Chinese identity, and they will not feel a true empire, which of course the current president is aiming at building. Or building back. Without Taiwan, it will not be a complete empire.
Let's go back to Richard, because
Maybe I'm wrong.
I probably spoke out of line in disputing what you said, Richard. Because I think we do have a different point of view. I mean, it's a terrible position to be in, having to say that, I think that it's really a question of peace versus justice in this case. And there's no possible peace that I can see, ceasefire anyway, wouldn't be peace, end of the fighting, that wouldn't result in an enormous injustice. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Meta, in terms of the Ukrainian people. And listening to them yesterday at the rally, they're fiercely willing to carry on fighting. Having said that, though, I would disagree with you that Putin's going to take back the Warsaw countries. I mean, he has had a great deal of difficulty taking over a quarter of Ukraine, and to think that he's going to take over any of the other countries that are already allied with NATO, I don't see that is in the cards. So I think that, again, you look at Gaza, and Netanyahu has gone for expansion as opposed to going for peace, a two-state solution. And I think that we need to be going for peace. I hear what you're saying in terms of justice, and certainly I agree with you 100% that Putin's a fascist dictator and is evil, kills his own people, these journalists, quote, his old friends, the oligarchs, etc. He's assassinated them all. And so certainly Putin should be tried for war crimes. But I think that right now they're at a stalemate, and that, to me, this is a time for negotiation. How that negotiation will turn out, I mean, that's part of the negotiation, but I don't think that you can put in prerequisites that, such as Ukraine says, Russia withdraw to its previous borders. Russia just isn't going to do that. So you got to negotiate from where things are at now. I think in terms of China, again, the status quo at the moment, I think, is probably somewhat acceptable. I mean, China obviously wants Taiwan, wants control, but at what cost? And I don't think the cost, excuse me, would outweigh trying to take it over militarily. What the U.S. has done
What,
is.
what do you mean? Sorry. What?
I don't think that I don't think China is going to go to war to take over Taiwan.
Hope you're right.
Yeah, I mean the U.S. What the U.S. does is it topples governments. The CIA goes in and either assassinates governments that they don't like or topples them. Supports radical resistance to governments that they don't like. I'm not sure that China is going to do that. So I would say that China will probably stay with the status quo unless, again, pushed into a conflict.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
I think the U.S. is setting itself up for a strong militarily position. Next month, I'm off to Seoul, South Korea. I've just been reading up on Jeju Island, which is an island just south of, it's a South Korean island just south of, off the shore of South Korea. And they're putting in a huge military base on this UNESCO beautiful island, which doesn't have any harbors or anything, but the U.S. is creating a harbor and going to put in a big naval base there. So the U.S. continues to surround China and Russia with military bases, over 800 of them. China, I think, has 2 or 3 outside of mainland China. So, I mean, the U.S. is just so far ahead militarily in terms of spending, spends more than all the other countries put together. It certainly has a much stronger military, and to fight the military battle with the U.S. is suicide. But fighting a nuclear war is suicide for everybody. So I'm still very afraid of accidents, miscalculation, or people actually deliberately doing something, either terrorists or somebody like Putin who gets backed into a corner.
Yeah. I want to tell you about a plan that I'm working toward. Peter will know about this. So I'm not sure the rest of you do. Last year, along with the Pugwash group, I held a series of talks with experts about how we might be able to overcome global warming with mostly technological innovations. So we explored 4 different possible ways of saving the world from global warming with technologies. And I think each of those 4 had about 5 or more shows devoted to discussing it, along with 4 or 5 experts. And we recorded those. Now they're there on the website and could be watched at any time. However, I've got a new idea. I've decided that Project Save the World needs to do more by way of real education in terms of informing the general public better than we've been able to do. We have, I see on the screen here all my dear friends, but not very many people who are strangers and who are not sufficiently educated about climate change. And so one of the things that I want to do is a project that will actually provide a course that would be informative to the general public if we could get people to enroll. And there are about 5 years ago, I tried to organize a course through something called edX, which many universities belong to. I was not allowed to do so because by then I was already an emeritus, a retired professor, and they only allow people to teach university level courses who are themselves still teaching actively. So I couldn't do it. And besides which, they wanted me to chop up my material into 5-minute segments, which I think would be disastrous. So I gave up on that, although there are several other companies that offer courses to people all around the world who pay. Mostly they pay. Sometimes they give free courses a little bit. And one of them is called Coursera, which is sort of like edX. But then there's another one called Udemy, Udemy, which offers courses that people can enroll in. They're mostly, the Udemy courses are not so much university academic courses as they specialize in skills training, how to code or how to use Excel sheets, or how to learn French, or how to, technical skill training and that kind of thing. They also offer a section of courses on kind of life things, how to be happy and how to get over your bad habits and all these things that if you go to a bookstore, there's a whole section on how to live better kinds of popular courses. Well, my notion is this. I think people need a little bit of course training on how to live better, how to be happier and so on. But I think that the message needs to be based on the idea that the way to be a happier person and be more fulfilled is to find a project that is more important than your own life and that you're willing to devote yourself to wholeheartedly, and that you think is bigger than yourself. And then learn about it and reach out and try to help other people solve that problem. So to me, the answer to how to be a happy person, at least for me, the solution has been, get busy fixing the world and trying to solve some problems of the world, and especially global warming. So that's what I've been spending a lot of time doing, and I recommend it highly to anybody who's trying to figure out how to live a happier life. So I see hearts popping up. There could be you like what I'm saying. That's very nice. Anyway, so what I'm planning to do, Peter's going to be involved with this next series, but we're going to have another series of shows, forums about global warming, especially focusing on the Arctic, because I am convinced, Peter has convinced me, that the melting of the Arctic sea ice and permafrost is one of the, if not the most ominous threat to humankind. I'll get to you in a minute, Richard. Thank you. But so I'm going to have a series of 35 shows about various ways in which maybe we can solve the Arctic melting. And we've already started. We've had 2 already, and we'll have another one tomorrow. Peter will be involved with it, and a number of other experts will be talking about iron salt aerosol tomorrow. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a course based on these conversations, these forums that we're going to be producing, these 35 things. But they'll have to be trimmed down to about 20 minutes apiece. Each one is now an hour long, but I found that I can actually take out a lot of verbiage and make them much more concentrated and get most of the informative material into a 20-minute segment. But accompany that with the information about, for people who are looking at finding the meaning of their lives, finding projects or a concern that they can really give their hearts and souls to solving. And I want to pitch it as a project within that category of how to live better is to become an activist and try to solve a global threat. So, but instead of immediately organizing all 35 of these lectures into a course, which I expect I'll charge for because I need to cover the cost, I thought I'd experiment by taking one of the 4 topics that we did with the Pugwash series last year and making that into a short course, which I can give for free on Udemy as kind of an experiment to see how hard the work is and whether I can manage it in case if it expands and becomes very, very popular. Because Udemy has literally millions of people around the world who take courses through them, literally many millions of students enrolled. And I'm not sure I can handle them all, but let me experiment with a shorter one. So I'm preparing that now. And I think in the next week or two, I'll actually be able to go to Udemy and say, let me offer this course for free for people who are interested. In this case, it will be a course on how to use soil amendments as a way of reducing global warming by capturing the soil. The rocks, when crushed, will absorb CO2 out of the atmosphere, and then you can put it in the soil, and it improves the quality of the soil and the quality of the food that is produced on that soil. So the course, there will be 5 different lessons, plus the material that encourage people to think of this as a way of solving their personal growth issues and becoming engaged with a project that is bigger than themselves as a way of personally growing and developing their own souls, if you will. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and you might want to have a lookout for it. I'll be sending out notices in a week or so that the course it will be available for anybody who wants to take it. It'll be a short course. It'll only be the total number of hours of videos will only be about 2 hours in all. And there'll be a little reading material and so on, but people can do it at their own speed, at their own computers, and whenever they feel like doing it for free. Okay, so that's my announcement. Do any of you have any comments or questions? I know Richard, you put your hand up, Richard Denton. What do you think?
Well, certainly I'd applaud you, Meta. I think this is a great idea. And look forward to seeing it and participating in it. I'm currently involved with a guy named David Gershon, and he has worked on a program called Peace on Earth by 2030. And he's developed, quote, the game, and he's written a book called Change 2.0. And what he is looking at is changing people behavior on a personal level, and he goes through 7 different steps. But the secret is right now he has about 150 people taking his course, but it's a hierarchy type thing. So the people that are taking the course, after they finish the course, they're going to go on and convert other people, who will then convert other people and spread the word that way. He was instrumental in doing a torch run around the world, a peace torch run that involved 25 million people. And as you say, we've got to go from 7 people here on the Zoom today to increase that up to 700 and then up to thousands. So I would recommend that you investigate him and his project, and I can send you and Adam the information on it. But yes, I think this would be very good, and more power to you. Excellent.
Thank you. All right. I see we have someone who's just joined us called the Peace and Justice Alliance. Hello, Mr. Peace and Justice. Who are you? You want to speak to us? He's in his car. Hello, Peace and Justice. I don't see your name, sir.
Oh, hi, Meta. How are you?
Who is it? I can't see you very well.
My name is Muhammad Mominul Haq.
Oh, yes. You're from the Bangladesh, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we have talked. Well, look, we're overtime. You know, you've arrived not just a little late, but we should have already closed the show about 5 minutes ago. But it's from 2 to 4 p.m. Yeah. And I want to...
3 to 4?
2 to 4, yeah. So next time, come back.
2 to 4, oh, sorry. I thought it is 4 to 5.
No, from 2 to 4. Always the last Sunday of every month. So I think we're going to close now, unless somebody has something you'd like to add before we sign off. And then I want to invite everybody to be sure and mark it in your calendars and come back next time at the end of March, the last Sunday in March. All right?
Yeah, Mata, sorry, I am late. Just I want to introduce, like I talk with you about what's going on in Bangladesh. If you permit me, I can say to the audience that we want solidarity and stand up for the Bangladesh people, democracy and human rights. You know, the present authoritarian regime keeping power since 2009. There was no election 2014, 18, and this January there was a one-sided controversial election. They put a lot of people in jail, over 30,000 to 40,000 opposition activists and civil rights activists. They put in jail. There is no civic speech or democracy in Bangladesh. We want every person solidarity and stand up for Bangladeshi people, democracy and human rights. We want any kinds of assistance from you. Any support is highly appreciated.
All right. I want to invite you to put any information you want onto our website. And I encourage everybody else listening or watching this forum to go to the website. It's called tosavetheworld.ca. And there are pages for each of our 6 global threats, plus 3 other issues, as well as a single page for every show that we produce, every forum that we produce. So there'll be one for this forum, for example, when I put it up in a couple of days on the website. So go there. And we have, by the way, a scroll window now, so that if you're looking for a particular individual forum that we did on video, you can scroll down till you find the one that you like or might be interested in, and click that, and it'll open up the window for you to watch the show or listen to it as an audio podcast. So I want to, and then you can comment. By all means, sir, tell us all about the problems in Bangladesh on the page that interests you. Either I would suggest on the page, well, this page, if you want to, because you're here on this show, and it'll be available in a couple of days, or you could enter it in the comments columns on the War and Peace page, or in the comments column on the Human Rights page, because I think the problem in Bangladesh is a problem of governance and human rights violations more than some of the other issues, right? So please go there, and the rest of you, please post your comments or reply if you read what somebody else has said. You want you have some thoughts about it, please just reply there. Okay. Well, we're over time by a bit, but it's been rewarding to me, and I hope you all have a good month. Yes, Charles.
Meta, just one thing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Yeah, the computer has been crazy tonight. I just want to mention that we haven't spoken about, in all the wars we have spoken about tonight, we haven't spoken about what's going on in Africa. And in particular in Congo, and in particular, for example, we're working in one of the refugee camps in Malawi, and we're working in Nigeria. And the situations are critical. It's poverty, it's high levels of traumatization, including lots and lots of violence, including lots of sexual violence. I'm not going to say any more because we are over time, but please be aware of it, and let's try and talk about it a little bit more next time.
Oh, absolutely. And you can post something there too, of course, if you are familiar with something new going on. By the way, one of the articles will be in the April issue of Peace Magazine, which I hope you all receive. It will be by John Bacher about something called the Africa Corps, which is apparently the organization, the military organization that is picking up where Prigozhin's troops, left off when Prigozhin died. Somebody is carrying it forward. So I don't know much about it, but the instead of being called the Wagner Group, it's now going to be called the Africa Corps, CORPS. And he will be describing that in an article in the upcoming issue. Okay? Thank you all for showing up. It's been fun, as usual. Not always jolly fun, but really rewarding and, to me, encouraging to know that we've got good people in this world. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Project Save the World produces these forums. This is episode 590. You can watch them or listen to them as audio podcasts on our website, tosavetheworld.ca. People share information there about 6 global issues, and we welcome your comments too. To find a particular talk show, check the scroll list on the home page or use the search bar. Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine, which now serves as a free-of-charge newsletter to help mobilize knowledge about 6 global threats to humankind. We gladly email the magazine as a PDF or link to any interested organization in the world that works to prevent a global catastrophe involving war and weapons, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, or cyber risks. Just email us at office@peacemagazine.org and we'll add your group's email address without charge to our list. Please type "Subscribe my group" as the subject of your email. For individual subscriptions at $20 Canadian per year, go to pressreader.com on your browser and search for Peace Magazine.